Nkechi was a proud African Igbo girl with smooth dark skin that glowed under the sun, her beauty reflecting both her physical appearance and her strong character. She was raised in a Christian home, where her mother often reminded her of the values of chastity. Nkechi carried this belief with her when she entered the bustling world of university life. Despite being surrounded by friends who indulged in campus romances, Nkechi stood firm on her decision: no sex before marriage. Her resolve earned her admiration from some and mockery from others, but she didn't waver, but rather, she is so determined to make her parents proud by making her papers. At the university, she met Daniel, a handsome and ambitious man who was instantly captivated by her. Daniel was charming and persistent, and over time, Nkechi allowed herself to fall in love with him. However, she made her boundaries clear and planned from the start: there would be no intimacy before marriage. Daniel, though frustrated and disappointed at times, assured her he would respect her wishes. Daniel promised her he would be fair and won't ask for sex until her approval to it. But in his heart, he began to grow impatient. He believed he could change her mind and devised a plan to test her commitment to her principles. The relationship between Nkechi and Daniel grew strong as days passed, and they were often seen walking hand in hand around campus, sharing laughter and dreams for the future. Nkechi admired Daniel's intelligence and his ability to make her feel special. She believed they were building something meaningful and strong together. Her friends envied her relationship, though some warned her to be cautious, saying Daniel might not be as patient as he seemed. Daniel, on the other hand, was torn. He truly loved Nkechi, but his desire for her became harder to suppress. His friends, who were less principled, teased him mercilessly. "How can you date such a beautiful girl and not taste the fruit?" one of them jeered. Daniel laughed it off but felt the pressure building inside. Slowly, his thoughts began to shift from loving Nkechi for who she was to seeing her principles as a challenge he needed to overcome. As their relationship grew, Nkechi started noticing some ugly changes in Daniel's behavior. He seemed distant sometimes, distracted during their conversations, and his frustration was harder to hide. One evening, during a quiet moment in the university library, Nkechi asked him what was wrong. Daniel forced a smile and assured her he was just stressed about his studies. But deep inside, he was struggling to reconcile his feelings of love and desire. That night, Daniel spoke to his closest friend, Steve, about his frustrations. Steve, who had a reputation for being a ladies' man, advised him to trick Nkechi into sleeping with him. "If she loves you, she'll give in," Steve said confidently. Though hesitant at first, Daniel began to entertain the idea. He convinced himself that if Nkechi truly loved him, she would eventually bend her rules. The seed of his plan was planted, though a part of him felt uneasy about betraying her trust. Daniel began to act sweeter and more attentive than ever before, showering Nkechi with compliments and small gifts. Nkechi was thrilled, believing that their love was growing stronger. She felt secure in their relationship and often daydreamed about their future together. Little did she know, Daniel was orchestrating a plan that would put her principles to the ultimate test. One weekend, Daniel invited Nkechi to a private dinner in a cozy apartment he had rented off campus. He told her it was a surprise to celebrate their one-year anniversary. Excited and flattered, Nkechi agreed, unaware of the ulterior motive behind the romantic gesture. As she prepared for the evening, Nkechi had no idea that Daniel's carefully laid trap was about to be set in motion. The evening of the dinner was enchanting. Daniel had spared no effort in creating the perfect ambience. The small apartment was lit with soft candlelight, and a gentle melody played in the background. The aroma of freshly cooked jollof rice and grilled chicken filled the air. Nkechi was deeply touched by the effort Daniel had put in. She felt special, loved, and more certain than ever that Daniel was the one for her. Not knowing that Daniel is after what is under her skirt. As they sat down to eat, Daniel praised Nkechi, calling her the most amazing woman he had ever met. His words melted her heart, and she found herself smiling uncontrollably. After dinner, they sat on the couch, talking about their dreams and their future together. For a moment, Nkechi allowed herself to imagine life as his wife, with a family of their own. She didn't realize that Daniel's kind words and gestures were part of a calculated plan to lower her defenses. Daniel, a smart and intelligent guy, thinks he can outsmart her, not knowing that God Almighty is the master planner. After dinner, Daniel brought out a bottle of wine. He poured them each a glass, encouraging Nkechi to relax and enjoy the evening. Nkechi hesitated for a moment. She wasn't much of a drinker. But Daniel reassured her, saying, "It's just one glass. You deserve it after such a long week." Trusting him, Nkechi took a sip. As the evening progressed, Daniel continued to pour more wine, subtly encouraging Nkechi to drink. She began to feel lightheaded, her usually sharp senses dulled by the alcohol. Daniel, noticing her relaxed state, decided it was time to put his plan into action. He gently leaned closer to her, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. Nkechi smiled, appreciating the intimacy, but she didn't notice the growing intensity in Daniel's eyes. As the evening grew more intimate, Daniel attempted to push boundaries. He began to whisper sweet nothings into Nkechi's ear, his hand slowly sliding down her arm. Nkechi, though tipsy, noticed the change in his demeanor and gently moved his hand away. "Daniel, I told you before, no sex until we're married," she said firmly, her tone filled with both love and determination. Her words jolted Daniel for a moment, but his frustration overpowered his conscience. He decided to press further, telling her, "Nkechi, we're going to get married anyway. What's the difference if we start now?" Nkechi, though hurt by his persistence, stood her ground. She pulled away from him and asked to leave. Daniel's heart raced. His plan wasn't going as he had hoped, but he wasn't ready to give up. Daniel, desperate to salvage the evening, apologized profusely. He blamed the wine for his behavior, telling Nkechi he didn't mean to disrespect her. Relieved by his apology, Nkechi decided to forgive him and stay a little longer. Daniel suggested they watch a movie to lighten the mood, and Nkechi agreed, thinking it would calm the tension. As the movie played, Daniel secretly sent a message to Steve, who was waiting nearby with an accomplice. Steve's role was to create a scene that would force Nkechi into a compromising position. Minutes later, a loud bang echoed from outside the apartment. Nkechi, startled, looked at Daniel, who pretended to be alarmed. "Stay here. Let me check what's going on," he said, rushing out of the room. Outside, Steve and his accomplice staged a fake break-in, slamming the door and shouting loudly. Nkechi, terrified, froze on the couch, her heart pounding. Moments later, Daniel returned, pretending to be panicked. "They are trying to break in," he exclaimed. "We need to hide in the bedroom." Without waiting for her response, he grabbed Nkechi's hand and led her to the room, locking the door behind them. Nkechi clung to Daniel, trembling with fear. He held her close, whispering that he would protect her no matter what. As they sat on the bed, Daniel began to stroke her hair, telling her how much he loved her. In her vulnerable state, Nkechi found comfort in his words, unaware that the entire situation was a setup designed to break her resolve. Daniel saw this as his chance. He leaned in closer, his hands gently holding her face. "Nkechi, I love you more than anything in this world," he whispered. "Let me show you how much I love you." Nkechi, though still shaken by the supposed danger outside, pulled back slightly. "Daniel, I love you too, but this isn't right. I can't go against my beliefs," she said softly. Daniel's frustration boiled over. "Nkechi, don't you trust me? Don't you love me?" he asked, his voice tinged with desperation. Nkechi looked into his eyes, seeing a side of him she hadn't noticed before, a side that made her feel uneasy.